Nuclear power is produced by the decay of radioactive elements. This source of energy is often debated, but still remains an area of extensive research. The fuel cycle begins with the mining of uranium. This is followed by enriching the uranium. The enriched product is then fabricated into fuel rods. The fuel rods are then placed in the nuclear core. This process generates electricity. Uranium has a half-life of over 700 million years, giving it the potential to be the longest-lived source of fuel in our energy grid. This makes nuclear energy an exciting prospect, but currently a wasteful process. Potentially reusable products are buried instead of recycling the uranium. These waste products are generated during enrichment, as well as after being used in the nuclear core. Dr. Justin Walensky's chemistry lab is working to improve the efficiency of this uranium-based fuel cycle.
My lab sort of starts from the back end. So when you go from using the nuclear fuel to, so we're trying to find ways in order to reprocess it.
In order to produce energy, the fuel rods are bombarded with a laser-like beam of neutrons. This changes the chemical composition of the elements, which releases energy. The product of this process is a fuel rod containing many different elements, of which only the uranium is desirable for reuse. Currently, separating the reusable uranium from the nuclear waste is very inefficient.
Because if you can't separate them out, then you're not going to be able to reprocess it in order to get back your fuel. And so that's why, and that expense is so much at this point that's why the U.S. does not reprocess. And it turns out it's actually cheaper for us to just get more uranium and just go back through the fuel cycle.
Andrew Burley, a postdoctoral fellow, studies the chemistry behind the actinide and lanthanide compounds that make reprocessing uranium difficult. Much of his work in the lab involves manipulating these compounds. One of his primary methods is recrystallization, which he uses to purify the compound he is interested in. Another method Dr. Burley uses to isolate compounds is a machine called a rotovap.
So essentially, what a rotovap does is removes the volatiles in your solution. So you have your compound dissolved in an organic solvent, which is typically volatile. It allows you to remove the solvent while keeping your product in the round bottom flask, so you can do further tests to analyze what exactly the compound is.
The Walensky lab uses these tools and others to separate individual elements from nuclear waste. Down the road, this research will help make the recycling of nuclear waste more cost-effective. In turn, less radioactive material will be consumed and buried in the United States.